The sky above northern France was too quiet. A silence so heavy it pressed against the cockpit glass. Captain Daniel Mercer, 29 years old, had been flying for nearly 3 hours. His squadron, once 10 strong, was gone, vanished into clouds of smoke and fire scattered across the fields below. He could still see them in flashes behind his eyes. The burning wings, the radio screams, the moment his commander's voice cut off mid-word. Now, he was alone. A single Spitfire slicing through a sea of gray. The gauges trembled. Fuel low. Ammunition barely enough for one more fight. And the radio, nothing but static and ghost voices that weren't really there. He pulled off his glove and wiped the frost from his canopy, squinting at the horizon. A soft glow flickered miles away tracer fire. The war was still raging down there. But up here, it felt like the world had stopped turning. Then the radar beeped. Once, twice, then steady. Contact. Daniel's heart kicked hard. He tapped the gauge to be sure. 12 blips, fast, moving straight toward him. Damn, he whispered. He knew what that meant. A squadron. Fighters. Enemy patrol sweeping the upper air corridors, looking for stragglers just like him. He pushed the throttle forward. The Spitfire responded with a low growl, shaking slightly from strain. The propeller spun faster, the horizon tilting as he climbed. Altitude meant survival, or at least a fighting chance. The radio hissed again. For a second, a faint voice broke through. All units, regroup, coordinates, then silence. He closed his eyes. It wasn't his base. It wasn't anyone he knew. Just the ghosts of the airwaves' pilots lost in the ether, their words still drifting somewhere between heaven and hell. A flicker caught his eye. Tiny silver dots glinting in sunlight. The enemy. 12 Messerschmitts, flying in perfect foul formation. Predators. Efficient. Cold. He had seconds to decide, run or fight. But with his engine coughing and no chance of outrunning them, there was really only one option left. Fight. He whispered to himself, the words barely audible over the wind. All right, boys. One more dance. He rolled the plane onto its side and dove into the clouds. The sudden drop pressed him into his seat. The altimeter spun wildly as mist swallowed everything. The air felt colder down here, wet, heavy, electric. He adjusted his goggles, eyes darting to the rear mirror. Shadows flickered in and out. The enemy was following. Fast. His breath fogged the glass. He could hear the bullets slicing the air, now those sharp cracks that meant death was close. He jerked the stick left. Then right evasive maneuvers drilled into muscle memory. The Spitfire roared in protest, metal groaning as G-forces clawed at the frame. He popped through a cloud layer and saw them. 4 above, 3 behind, 5 fanning out to the sides. He was surrounded. But Daniel had one advantage: the Sunday. He banked toward it, using the blinding glare as cover. The Messerschmitts hesitated, losing visual contact for just a heartbeat. And that's all he needed. He turned hard, full Immelman nose up, roll, dive. Came down straight on their leader. Got you. He fired. The cannons erupted the recoil, shaking his entire body. Smoke, flame, and the enemy plane disintegrated midair. The others scattered, forming new lines. The first kill wasn't victory. It was a declaration. He had just told 12 trained killers, "I'm still here." Bullets ripped through his right wing. One grazed, his shoulder pain flashed white-hot. But he didn't flinch. The world shrank into a rhythm of instinct and motion. Turn, fire, roll, dive, breathe. He clipped another, its tail sheared off and spiraled downward, vanishing into cloud. 8. Left. He looked down the French countryside rolled beneath him like a painting torn by smoke. Roads, rivers, flashes of light. Every second he survived was borrowed time. Then silence. No more bullets. No more shadows. Just gray. He slowed the throttle. Looked around. Had they broken off? A flicker on the right wing mirror. Then another. No. They were regrouping. And this time, they were coming for him together. He could feel the tremor in his hands now, not from fear, but exhaustion. 3 hours in the air. No backup. No escape. He touched the photo taped near his instruments, a woman and a baby, smiling. Just one more flight, he had promised her. He adjusted the throttle again, breathed deeply, and turned back toward the horizon. He wasn't done yet. The sky was no longer empty. It was alive with motion, 12 silver predators cutting through the light, weaving in perfect synchronization. Captain Daniel Mercer leveled out, the stick vibrating beneath his glove. The sun gleamed off his canopy as he scanned the horizon, nothing but thin white trails arcing toward him. He could almost feel their eyes now, a dozen trained pilots, calculating angles, distances, speed. Predators closing in on prey. He flipped a switch. Guns armed, oxygen steady, heart rate climbing. Every muscle in his body felt tuned to one truth. This is it. The first pass came fast. A shriek of engines, a flash of shadow overhead. Bullets ripped through the air like metallic thunder. He rolled left, narrowly missing a burst that shredded the clouds behind him. His cockpit shook. Oil sprayed across the glass. A warning light blinked red. He exhaled slowly. Not today. The enemy looped back, the formation tightening, moving like a living machine. Daniel dove, the altimeter spinning as wind howled around him. Below, green fields blurred into streaks. Above, the squadron descended, sunlight flashing off their wings like knives. He yanked hard right. The G-force hit like a hammer. Vision tunneled, edges darkening. But the move worked. Two broke formation, overcorrected, and drifted straight into his sights. He squeezed the trigger. A stutter of recoil. Tracers tore across the sky. One Messerschmitt exploded in orange flame, the other clipped its wing and spiraled out of control. Daniel jerked the stick, banking away from the blast. "Two down," he muttered. His voice was steady, calmer than it should have been. Adrenaline had burned away the fear. What was left now was something colder focus. Pure, mechanical survival. He dove again, disappearing into low fog. Bullets hissed above, shattering through mist. He could hear the enemy shouting through their radios, faint, foreign, echoing like ghosts. Then came the silence again, eerie, hanging. He'd vanished from their sights. He leveled the wings and climbed gently through the cloud bank, emerging into blinding sunlight. The sky opened like an ocean, endless, shimmering gold. And for a fleeting second, he was free. But freedom never lasted long. The radar beeped again, a single tone that meant they found him. 6 dots. No 8. They'd split formation to flank him from both sides. "Smart," he whispered, almost admiring them. He pushed the throttle forward, feeling the last reserves of the engine's strength. The Spitfire roared in defiance. The sky became a storm. Bullets screamed past, tracer fire slicing through clouds. Every maneuver was instinct: barrel roll, dive, half-loop, climb. The horizon spun like a wheel of death. He clipped one more, a lucky shot that caught an enemy's fuselage. The explosion rocked the air behind him. 5 left. Then a sound he dreaded. The right engine coughed. Once, twice. He looked down, fuel nearly gone. The needle trembled at the red. He was running out of everything. Fuel, ammo, strength. A bullet shattered the canopy glass, grazing his cheek. Blood trickled down, warm against cold air. He didn't flinch. He couldn't. He jerked into a roll, using the cloud's edge as cover. The sunlight flashed, confusing the enemy sensors. For a few seconds, precious seconds, they lost him again. He gasped for breath, pulling the oxygen mask tighter. Sweat dripped from his temples. His arms ached from constant pressure on the controls. He could feel the Spitfire fighting back now, old, tired, groaning under stress. But so was he. He thought of his commander's last words, over the radio before the ambush. "If you're the last one up there, make it count." He smiled faintly. "Aye, sir." Then he dove again, straight through the center of the enemy formation. It was madness, suicide. But it worked. The sudden dive forced them to scatter. He rolled inverted, flipped behind one, and fired. The Messerschmitt burst into flame. 4 left. The sky was chaos now, smoke trails crisscrossing, debris falling like dark snow. He felt the plane trembling, one wing smoking, instruments flickering. But Daniel didn't stop. He couldn't stop. Every second alive was another defiance, another heartbeat stolen from death itself. He twisted through the clouds again, hearing engines scream around him. In that moment, there was no sky, no ground, no world. Just motion, just instinct, just survival. And somewhere deep inside the quiet, steady thought that this fight would be remembered. Not for victory, but because he refused to disappear quietly. He leveled the wings again, scanning the horizon. The last four were regrouping, circling high. Cautious now. They'd realized it wasn't a hunt anymore. It was a duel. One man against four. Daniel took a deep breath. The air burned his lungs. His hand hovered over the trigger. He looked at the empty sky ahead, then whispered, "Come and Finn." The horizon was red now. Not from sunset, but from fire. Pieces of metal drifted down through the clouds like falling ash. The air was heavy, trembling with the echoes of war. Captain Daniel Mercer could barely hear the engine anymore. It wasn't a roar now, just a wounded growl, steady but weak. He reached down, adjusted the throttle, but the lever barely moved. The Spitfire was exhausted, and so was he. He glanced at the photo again, the one taped beside his compass. His wife, smiling. Their daughter, still a baby when he left. He wondered if she'd even remember his face. Then a glint on the horizon. Four shapes, cutting through the smoke, flying tight. They were coming back. Daniel straightened in his seat, feeling the ache in his shoulders, the burn in his lung. 4 against 1. His plane half destroyed, his ammo counter blinking red. He whispered, "All right then." He wiped the blood from his cheek, rolled the plane toward the sun, and climbed. Slowly, painfully. The Spitfire groaned in protest, the controls shaking in his hands, but he forced it higher, into the glare, into the heat. He'd learned this trick long ago. Sunlight blinds the enemy. Make them look up, and they'll never see death coming. He reached the top of the climb and cut the throttle. The plane drifted, silent. He held his breath. Below, the 4 fighters fanned out, searching. He waited. Then, gravity took hold, and he dove. The engine screamed back to life. The air tore around him. His heartbeat matched the roaring descent. He fired once, twice, and a Messerschmitt erupted into flame, tumbling through the clouds. 3 left. Bullets hissed past him, punching holes through metal. One ripped the corner of his wing clean off. He spun, fought the stick, and leveled again. His oxygen mask had cracked, air was thin now. Each breath came with a rasp, but he didn't slow down. He looped through the smoke, chasing one target, flying so close he could see the enemy pilot's face through the canopy. For a moment, their eyes met, just 2 men in the same sky, fighting to stay alive. Daniel pulled the trigger. Nothing. A hollow click. Out of ammo. He hit the console, desperate, checking the belt feed. Empty. Every round spent. The last bullet already gone. And still, 3 enemies remained. The rational choice would be to break off, dive for the clouds, try to make it back to base. But Daniel knew he wouldn't make it that far. The Spitfire's right wing was cracked. The fuel gauge nearly empty. The engine whining like a dying animal. So he did the only thing left. He turned back toward them. He flew head-on into the formation. Empty guns, smoking engine, pure defiance. The first enemy opened fire, tracers streaking past. Daniel rolled, clipped under him, and rammed the tail of the second plane with his wingtip. The impact ripped metal apart, sparks burst like fireworks. The enemy spiraled out, screaming into the clouds. 2 left. Daniel's own plane was barely holding together. The stick jerked wildly, hydraulics gone. But he kept flying. He turned into the sun again, forcing the last 2 pilots to lose visual contact. Then silence. He drifted above the clouds, breath shallow. The radio hissed. "Mercer, if you hear this, return to base. Repeat, return to..." Static. He smiled faintly. If only it were that easy. Below the clouds, the last 2 fighters reappeared. They circled cautiously, unsure if he was dead or waiting. Daniel took a deep breath. Looked down at the cracked photo one last time. "Stay brave," he whispered. Then he pushed the nose down straight into the dive. The two Messerschmitts reacted late, breaking formation, firing blind. Bullets tore through the air, slicing the tail clean off. The Spitfire shook violently, metal shrieking, but Daniel held steady. He wasn't aiming anymore, just falling with purpose. At the last second, he clipped one of the enemy wings. Both planes spun away, spiraling in chaos. Fire, smoke, silence. The world went white. When the noise faded, the sky was empty again. Only drifting clouds and burning fragments falling through them. Daniel blinked, vision blurry. The Spitfire was gliding now, powerless, barely in one piece. Below, the sea shimmered. He leveled the wings, steady hands despite the tremor. The engine was gone. Instruments dead. Just wind and gravity. He guided the plane toward the water lower, slower, until the horizon tilted one last time. Crash metal folding, waves exploding upward, then silence. He gasped, coughing, salt, and smoke. The wreckage floated nearby. The nose of the Spitfire half submerged. He was alive. Somehow. The sky above was empty, no enemies, no allies. Just peace. He leaned back, chest heaving, the sun warm on his face. In the distance, faintly, a plane exploded, a trail of smoke curling toward the sea. He didn't know if it was the last one or just a ghost. All he knew was that he'd survived. When Captain Daniel Mercer opened his eyes, the world was made of sky and sea. The line between the two was almost gone blue, fading into blue. He coughed again, salt water burning his throat. His hands trembled as he clung to a torn wing panel drifting beside him. The Spitfire. His Spitfire was gone now, swallowed by the waves. The silence felt unreal. After hours of engines, gunfire, and screams, the stillness was deafening. For a long moment, he just floated staring upward, feeling the sunlight on his face. He was alive, barely. Every breath hurt. Every heartbeat echoed against his ribs. But the sky was calm now. And then he heard it. A low, distant sound. Engines. He looked up, squinting through the glare. A black dot moved slowly across the horizon. Then another. Then two more. Enemy? Rescue? He couldn't tell. His heart started to race again. He wanted to wave, to shout, but his body wouldn't obey. The exhaustion was too heavy. He could only float, helpless, and watch. Minutes passed. The engines faded. The dots vanished into clouds. He was alone again. Daniel closed his eyes. He thought of home, the little cottage near Dover, the smell of the sea, the laughter of his daughter echoing down the hallway. He could almost hear it now, carried by the wind. "Stay with me," he whispered to himself, voice barely audible. Hours passed. The tide carried him slowly toward the French coast. The sun dipped lower, turning the waves gold. That's when he saw it, a fishing boat. Small, wooden, moving steadily through the water. He tried to raise his arm. It felt like lifting stone, but somehow he did. "Hey!" he croaked, the word cracked in his throat. "Here!" The boat turned slightly. Someone pointed. Then movement. A voice shouted back. "Another!" He smiled weakly. Relief washed over him, heavier than the sea itself. Hands reached down, pulling him aboard. He collapsed onto the deck, coughing, shivering. Someone covered him with a blanket. Another man shouted orders in French. Daniel's vision blurred. The world tilted. He could barely hear them, just muffled voices, a heartbeat, and the groaning of wood. Then, blackness. When he woke again, it was to the sound of waves against stone, a ceiling above him. Warm light flickering from a lantern. He was lying in a small coastal house. A nurse knelt beside him, pressing a wet cloth to his forehead. "Easy now," she said softly. "You're safe." "Where?" he rasped. "Where am I?" "Calais. Fishermen found you. You've been unconscious for a day." He blinked slowly, trying to piece together the memories, the fight, the crash, the endless sea. Did anyone else? She shook her head. No one. Silence. Daniel turned his head toward the window. Outside, waves rolled against the dark shore. A gull cried in the distance. He was safe, but he was also the only one left. Weeks later, when he finally returned to base, the airfield was quiet. His name had already been marked Kia killed in action. The clerk who saw him froze in disbelief. Mercer, you're supposed to be dead. Not yet, Daniel said, managing a faint smile. The debrief was long, filled with disbelief and silence. The report read like fiction. One Spitfire pilot, isolated behind enemy lines, engaged 12 enemy aircraft and survived. 5 confirmed kills. 3 unconfirmed. No backup. No witnesses. The mission file was labeled classified. That night, he stood by the hangar, watching the sunset over the runway. The smell of oil and burnt metal lingered in the air. He lit a cigarette, hands still trembling, and looked up at the sky. Somewhere up there, the ghosts of the battle still drifted, fragments of planes, echoes of voices, frozen in the clouds. He exhaled smoke, whispering into the wind. You boys gave me one hell of a fight. Then he looked down at his reflection in a puddle-tired eyes, blood still under his collar, a thin scar across his cheek. He was alive, but part of him hadn't come back. Years later, when people spoke his name, it was always in fragments, a rumor, a legend, a whispered story among pilots. The man who fought an entire squadron alone and survived. But Daniel never told it himself. He never corrected them. He just listened, quietly, because he knew the truth. It wasn't skill or luck or bravery that saved him. It was something else. Something he could never quite explain. Maybe fate. Maybe mercy. Maybe the sky just chose to let him go. He walked out of the hangar one last time, his hand brushing the cold metal of his plane's replacement. He looked up at the clouds, eyes narrowing against the light, and under his breath he said the words only a survivor can truly understand. Some ghosts fly with you, even after you land.